Hey makers, this is Dhruvin and welcome to the third season of the new segment Talk with Devs. This is the segment where we are introducing the industry experts from the globe and we are learning something unique things from them. Today's speaker is also one of the amazing speaker and today we have Mr. Krishna Rachakonda with us. Hey
Oh,
Krishna, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing absolutely well, and I'm really excited for today's session because today we are going to talk about one of the amazing things related approval, and it is like customized parallel sequential approval via Power Apps and Power Automate, and I'm really excited for today's session. So before we get started, Krishna, I would like to ask you, like, what is the end outcome from today's session which our audience will learn? If you can just highlight in couple of words, that would be great.
As we know in the Power Platform, there are many ways to implement a same use case, right? So in every way, there are pros and cons, limitations that we hit with API calls or other things. So based on your exact or specific details of use case, we need to select the approach. So I will explain today about why I took this approach to implement approval process.
Okay, that's great because approval is the most useful and most important use case when we are implementing with any project.
That
So
is
thank you so much for choosing that topic. So definitely we are going to get lot more insight around that. So before we get started, let me just give you few introduction about Krishna. So Krishna is a Microsoft MVP for business application. He's Microsoft certified trainer and subject matter expert for Microsoft 365 and Power Platform. He's very active in community. So he's a well-known community speaker. He's doing blogging and also he's a community contributor. So he's a Power Automate super user as well. And he's been part of this industry since last 2 decades. So I would like to welcome Krishna again on this show, and I would like to hand over the stage to him, and let's talk more about the customized, parallel, and sequential approval using Power Automate and Power Apps. So Krishna, over to you. I would like to hand over the stage to you.
Thanks, Dhruvin, for the introduction. And if anybody wants to follow me, you can use my contact details here. I'll be happy to connect, and I really love to grow my community contacts as well. So I love to see you all. So the main use case for today's session is about the invoices. So I had a client where they wanted to implement approval process, but as we know, approval process is it can be like a one stage or multiple stages. And in some cases, one stage or multiple stages. At every stage, we know that either we can implement either sequential or parallel. And in this particular use case, they do not know in every single case whether they want approvals, parallel or sequential. They want that dynamic nature of the product, that they want, if they want to switch from parallel to sequential or sequential to parallel, they need that capability inbuilt into the system. And also, these approval process basically, they have a wide variety, so many divisions across US, and they want to, for some divisions they want sequential, some divisions they want parallel. So it's all mix and match, and so many permutations and combinations. So because of that use case, I explored, we know there are like a out of the box approval process, and what's the flexibility in it, and how we can use it, and if not, what's the alternative for that. So that's the my use case. So the use case here is when a initiator submits the an invoice is nothing but a document with all the transactions or on the billing details. Then based on the division, it there are certain approvers that they need to approve it. So before it actually get paid, so it needs to go through a multiple levels of approvals. So in some divisions, from the ground level, when somebody submits an invoice, so it needs to either go through a sequential approval or parallel approval. So in the case of sequential approval, as we know, once a person approves it, it will move on to the next one, and then it will move on to the next one. In parallel, the task will be created one for each of them, and one of them needs to approve it. So like that, we have multiple divisions or multiple stages in which the approval process needs to go through. Right now, I defined only 3 levels, but this system, whatever I designed, we can expand it to any number of stages. And then finally, once that is approved, maybe we can post the payments automatically, or we can actually make any entries into the SAP finance system and all of that. So if you can also see at any level, if we reject those invoices, those should go back to the initiator, not to the division approval. And then once the initiator submits it, it has to come back again in the same process, because when initiator misses some important information like about the invoice, if at any point of time it is rejected, it has to again get approved. So to implement this process, I actually approved out-of-the-box approval actions because the use case demands the flexibility in changing sequential versus parallel at any point of time for different divisions and all. I felt like we can definitely use out-of-the-box approval process and all, but once we define the approval actions in the flow, it flipping them between approvals, parallel and sequential, it will be tough to manage. And second thing also, as we know with the Power Automate, we have a limitation of 28 days. The approval the history of the flow, that's very common. We talk about it all the time. And also approvals, once this 28 period is over, then the flow will be canceled or suspended, and then those flow tasks will remain as orphaned in the system. And also the sometimes if we see the after 28 approvals, we know like the flows will fail and the approval task continues to execute in the action center. And what happens if the approvers responds to those tasks, it will keep the system in kind of a confusion state, or data integrity issues we will run into with respect to those tasks. And also there are few limitations with approval tasks or approval actions. Like if I use create and wait actions, especially before the approval process goes into waiting stage, if somebody approves it, there are chances that approver can approve it anytime. So before it goes to waiting stage, if somebody approves it, that flow will stuck, so it will not move forward. There are some limitations with approval actions. We need to keep all those things in mind. Also, sometimes in most of the use cases, the business says, oh no, my approval process will finish in less than 28 days. I don't need to worry about that, all of that. But in reality, even if it goes beyond a day, then all this needs to be restarted. And we need some easy way of maintaining the post developing things, right? So that's why like I want to give more flexibility as well. But this maintenance also needs some time. I agree on that, but there are easy ways to maintenance as long as we can document. So keeping all of this in mind, I created a system here. This is my invoice application. Whatever you are seeing, it is not like this is not exact version what I created previously, but it contains the major versions of it. So let's click on submit invoice. And by the way, I'm very glad to share that I created the user interface using the creator kit. So it actually makes a lot of your things very easy, and you don't need to work too much on individual components. So it makes a little more, see the hover effects and all of that. It's all coming with like those creator kit components. And if I go to submit invoice, that's where I see my invoice form. And in the invoice form, on the left side, and one of the requirement was, as soon as I upload my invoice, I want to see what is in that document. So that's why like you see on the right side, there is nothing here. It's a document preview place. So I am selecting a sample invoice here. Once I select the invoice, I can see the invoice on the right side as soon as I select the file. One thing is there are few restrictions or rules were applied here, like we can only be able to select only one file, and that should be a PDF file because of the restrictions, the requirements. And also, as soon as I select the invoice, you can see the file name gets appeared here, and we can edit that. And also after that, we can select the divisions for which we are submitting it. And then the invoice date, the invoice number. We can apply artificial intelligence to grab all that information from the invoice, but at this point, because it needs a separate license, we are not doing all of that. And also, you can see all the information and other things. Once I submit the invoice details, I can, I'm going to show you how that will look like. So this is the dashboard where I can see all my invoices. And if I open any existing one, you can see as soon as I submit the invoice in behind the scenes, still I'm using Power Automate, because without Power Automate, we can do a few things in the Power Apps, but I'm using Power Automate flows, but I'm not using approval actions. So here, as soon as I submit it, what happens is this data will land up in SharePoint library, list. I'm using SharePoint as a data source. And then what happens is there is a flow that gets triggered, and it checks what is the current status of that particular invoice, and it actually routes the item into a particular next stage. It calculates all the approvers, it calculates the other details the system needs to generate and all of that. And then we can see as soon as I submit it, I lose the option of editing the invoice details because it's already submitted for approval. So all of that. And also you can see an invoice ID gets generated, and you can, as an initiator, I can see the details as well. If I'm an approver, I can, and also as soon as we submit the invoice, we will see different tasks gets created based on the configuration I made for this particular division, whether it's an approval, sequential or parallel. I'll show you all of that in a moment. So if I go to the task pane, then I have all these tasks lined up. So this is a sequential workflow for this particular division. And you can see these approvers are lined up. And if I'm an initiator, I can see the tasks, but I cannot approve them. If any task is approved, I can go and check the details of the task. But if any task is pending, I will still see the view details button here because I'm right now I opened this session as a application administrator. That's why I have all the access and permissions. So here, when I click on view details, I can see all the details of the task, like when the task ID, title assigned to, all the details, and what's the outcome, when was it approved, and all the comments and all of that. And if I go to any other task which is waiting for approval, because even though I'm an administrator for the system, I cannot approve it because currently the task is assigned to a different person. If I want to approve that task, even though as a administrator, I have to reassign it to myself. So these task interface actually inbuilt with it can approve the task, it can reject the task, it can reassign it, and we can close this dialog box also. So when we reassign it, again, it will show you the task details and all of it. And if you want to reassign it, just select the user, and which is maybe I'll assign it to Krishna. That's my account, and simply I'll update it. As soon as I update it, it will instantly update the task, and it is assigned to me. And as soon as I click on it, I can see now my buttons are also enabled for me, approve or reject and all of that. And now I want to approve it. So in that case of approval, I can say like, okay, approved by Krishna. I can say approve it. And in the case of reject, the comments, as we know, it is mandatory as well. And when I click on approve, it actually approves the task, and if there are any other approvers in the sequential line for the same division at the same phase, then it will immediately create the another task for the user and assign it to the user right away. And also you might have seen, observed, when I submitted the task, there is a progress bar or something like at the spinner, which tells you, okay, there is some background process is happening. And that spinner shows up as long as the background process is happening. And there are like multiple phases here. Right now I'm at a division approval process approver. Again, I'll try to approve it, but I cannot approve as a normal approver, so I'll just assign it to myself again, and then click on update. I will again assign it to myself. The good thing is, while I'm doing all of this in the back end, in the Power Apps, I'm using a lot of patch functions to update the history of the invoice as well, because invoice always needs to go through some auditing as well. So if you see history, from the moment I start submitting the invoice, I'm capturing all the details of it, the system, whoever is doing all the operations and all the details, how many tasks are created, whom it was assigned, and all the whenever I approve it or reject it, and all of that, those details are kind of captured. And I'm showing that as a history, which is non-editable for anyone. And also throughout the process, we can see as soon as we submit the invoice, you see the export to PDF functionality as well, for review with the user or department. In case if they want to export and save a copy of it or print it, they can export that as a PDF also. So because it launches the PDF file once it opens up, so it's a new window. So you can see the invoice application, all the details. It's actually the main invoice details, how many tasks were created, who got assigned, who approved, what's their comments, and also the whole history of the invoice as well. So this will actually give a clear understanding of any invoice. They have it in the system. So coming here, and again, there are some approval and rejection process as well. And if a task is rejected, as I said, at any phase, that will come back to the initiator. So if now I opened one of the tasks here, so for example, I reject it, then if I reject it, then it will come back to the initiator, and you can see the color code of the task as well. That way, like, okay, the task is rejected, and you can see now it is rejected, and all of these are disabled as well. And if I come back to my dashboard, and I mean the users will get notifications for each of these operations as well. And let me just refresh the background process. It needs to run though. Yeah, you see that it just finished it, and you can see pending initiator review. When the invoice comes back to the initiator, now as an initiator, I got the full capability of and updating all the details of my invoice. And also I can go to these tasks, but I cannot edit them, but I can see what's happening and what's the details of these tasks. I can check the history as well. I can say, okay, these are the rejection comments. I can see that. And here, if I come here, I can change my invoice document, I can change the division, and I can do all of that just like a new invoice. And when I submit it again, the system will treat it as a new invoice, but it will not create a new invoice, but the process will be recalculated based on my changes, and it will reassign the necessary approvers in different phases. So this is the overview of the system. But first, what we will do is we will go back into the SharePoint and how I use different SharePoint lists and all of that schema. And also we'll come back to the application and how the logic was implemented. We'll see all of that. So one of the reasons why I use SharePoint is, again, the requirements from the business, because they do not want to spend more premium charges on the licensing. That's why like the SharePoint was used. But if you ask me, I would definitely prefer to go with the Dataverse for sure, because you can easily model a lot of these things, and some of these things can be, we can avoid a lot of manual work and coding as well. So if I go to my SharePoint, there are SharePoint list. Let me just duplicate this, and we will see all the SharePoint lists which are involved in this process. So you may see few more. The main SharePoint lists which are involved in this process are invoices, invoice tasks, invoice configuration, invoice admins, as well as approvers and invoice documents. So these are all different SharePoint lists and libraries are used. So let's go with the approvers SharePoint list first. In the approvers, as I said, the approvers are all, I mean, first let's start with the divisions. Sorry to switch it, but the divisions are the ways, are the main ways, like through the approvers are associated with the divisions. So the divisions we have, let's say, like in US, all the different 50 states are the 50 divisions. So we can also set the flag as active or inactive to, if you want to exclude or include any of these divisions. So once I have all these divisions in place, and once I have these are active, then I need to define the approvers. So I can define the approvers for every division. As I said earlier, we need to decide, okay, in this particular division, what is the process we are going to follow for the approval process? Is it a sequential or is it parallel? So let's take here, Alaska is my division here. And if you see here, the first phase in that division is, even though in that particular division, we need to go through multiple phases or stages. So in this particular Alaska division, we have three phases. One is division approver, second one is corporate approver, third one is accounting approver. So in each phase, I need to define whether it is sequential or parallel. So if you see here, I included three people here, and their division and their role and the approval order. If it is sequential, I need to define the approval order as 1, 2, 3, so that the approval can go from one person to the other person. In the other phase or a stage, I defined the approval order as 0. That means all these three users will go in parallel. So that's how I'm manipulating the approvers. If you see the third phase or the stage, accounting approver, again, I defined them as sequential. So that's why, like, if you remember in my user interface earlier in the invoice, when I approved it as Daniel, then it went to David Warner. So once I finish with David Warner, what happens is the backend process will calculate, okay, the next phase, I'm done with all the approvers in the division approver. That's the first thing. And second thing, oh, now I need to move the approval process from division approval to corporate approval. So then it will see the corporate approval. It will try to identify, okay, is it a sequential or parallel? So sequential means it will see the numbers 1, 2, 3 like that. If it is parallel, it will see for 0. So are there any approval orders with more than 0? Then it will try to see that if there is more than 0, that means it is sequential. So it will try to get, if it is parallel, it will get all these users and it will create the task for every single person immediately. If it is sequential, it will only take the first person with the first number and it will try to assign a task for them. So that's how it is manipulating in the backend in the Power Automate.
Mhm.
And if I, yeah,
Krishna, here I just have a one quick question.
sure.
Like, let's say here you set up the different approval sequence like parallel and sequential. So over here you have defined the role as well. So how do you decide that this role, like let's say division approver is the first role that should be called, then corporate approver or for accounting approver? Is there any numbering for that role as well?
At this point, I did not made that generalized, but we can definitely do that. At this
Okay.
point, it is right now in the system, it is kind of hard coded that every time we submit it, it will go from division, corporate, and accounting. But as I am manipulating these approval orders, we can definitely generalize that as well.
Okay, okay. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
That will be more handful. That will also help us to extend the system further to like 3 levels or 10 levels or 50 levels.
Exactly.
We can definitely do that. I mean, the code right now is very modularized, and also we can expand it. If you, I mean, if I need to add 2 more levels, or if I need to reduce it to 1 level, we can. All we need is like maybe a day or two maximum to reduce. I mean, right now it is not. It's not generalized, but we can definitely generalize that.
Okay, okay, great.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's the main heart of this process is, as we know, approvers and this configuration. If you don't configure properly, then the process will not work. And all the approvers, we will talk about the security at the end, as well. So the invoices is the main SharePoint list. So in the invoice, like there are a lot of columns which and also I try to make it more relational, but I didn't use lookups and all of that. I'm manipulating all these columns through the Power App. I try to keep these data types of the SharePoint list columns as very simple, not like lookups and complex columns. I'm not using that, but there are my invoice ID is my main reference ID for to connect to different SharePoint lists. So the invoice has all these columns, where I'm capturing the invoice ID, date, and all the metadata of the invoice, and the process status, which is a choice. You can see the status, the status column as you can see there are a number of approvals, all of that. And if we want to extend the system, we need to extend all of that. And also the other important thing is my history column, which I said, which we see that in the history tab. This one is nothing but a multi-line text field. If you come to backend system, you can update the content in it, but it is just a simple plain text. But through Power App, I'm actually writing all that logic. I mean, all the instructions. I'm appending it to the previous statements. So that's why like we can store all that history into a single field rather than a separate SharePoint list again. And coming to the invoice tasks. So based on the backend process, how it is configured, the approval process, when it moves from one division to one stage to another one, I'm leveraging SharePoint tasks list, added additional metadata fields, which I require for the process. And whenever we need the new task, I'm creating the task into this task list. And there are a couple of flows which are attached to this list to send notifications. And whenever it is done, like we are recalculating other stuff as well. And I think we talked about the divisions. And finally, one more thing is invoice documents. So whenever I come here, whenever I try to click on export to PDF, then I'm actually, once the PDF file for an invoice is exported, I'm generating that invoice document into the document library. So that in future, if we want to review any of this, then I can actually, I've not built it, but I would like to directly point very next to the, instead of every user coming to the invoice and clicking on it, if it is already generated, if the process is complete, we want to reduce the number of calls and the process, right? We can show next to the invoice only, so that they can click or download and all of that. So that's why I'm storing it for future reference as well. So yeah, any questions on the backend?
Nope, all good. It's pretty clear and simple. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So now let's go into the actual process. And again, this application has, as I said, I just avoided only the approval actions. I couldn't avoid the flows, because the backend process, once I submit an invoice, still I need flows to do some job that will move the process little forward and backward. And but at any point of time, the invoice during the approval process, no workflow instance is in execution stage. Means no workflow is waiting in the memory for the user actions, because I am not used those approval actions. So coming to the flow, I mean, my solution here, I have one Canvas application, which I shown you right now. And there are flows, I mean, 3 flows right now. One is main approval task inflows, task invoice. That's the main flow for the, I mean, heart of the process, which has all the different stages of the approval process. And also I have a child flow, which I'm calling from the main flow to create the task, because at every stage, after I recalculate the process, or at every stage, I need to create tasks. So I just put that logic outside that main flow so that I can reuse that stuff. So that's why I created a child flow and using it from the main flow. And to export all the details of the invoice, I'm using another flow. And as we know, as we have seen, the details of an invoice is spread across multiple SharePoint lists. That's why my flow will be connecting to all those different SharePoint lists to grab the data and actually dumping the data into PDF file. So let's go into the first, we'll start with the submit invoice, and then we will see the main flow, and then we will proceed with the other ones. So the submitting invoice is pretty simple. It is just, as we have seen, this is just a PDF control where I'm showing the label and all of that. And if you see here, my invoice form, it is out of the box of PDF control, where whenever I upload a document here, immediately I'm just showing the preview of the document. And also, as I said, the business requirement was to limit to one document, and the type should be a PDF, and all of that is pretty much configurable in the attachment control. You can go and see maximum attachments we can define. And also, this is again, maximum attachments is again a configurable item from the SharePoint list. And also PDF file, all that logic is embedded within this attachment control, and rest of the metadata fields are all just a metadata. And once we submit it, once we submit this, once we click on the submit button, I'm actually doing the validations here on the submit button, because I want to have the whole control. Even though I use the form control, I'm still using the validation on the button, because I want to have the control. Because there are some custom logic and cascadings and other things. So I used all the logic inside the submit button. You can see custom error messages and all of that. And finally, once I'm done with it, I'm actually submitting the form. And once I submit the form, my backend process, which is create approval task for the invoice, that gets triggered. So the process is, once I submit the form, an invoice item is created in the invoice SharePoint list. So in the invoice SharePoint list, once an item is created, by default, the status is set to submitted. And also, when I'm submitting the item on the form, as soon as I submit the item, I have some logic on the form, on success of the form, which actually checks whether because I'll be submitting the form in 2 instances, as a new form, or when the invoice rejects, again it comes back and resubmits it. 2 times I submit it, so I use in both the times. So that's why, like, I'm checking some conditions, I'm checking and constructing an invoice ID also for my future reference throughout the process, because that's easy way to reference any invoice, and calculating the total amount, and writing some history as well. As you have seen, I'm constructing the timestamp and the user details and all of that, and prefixing, and I mean appending all those strings and writing all of that data, and also setting the process as submitted as a first step. Once I submit that, one main point or important point is, I'm actually, even though I have a process here which will trigger, I mean, I have a process here. Let me open the flow here. Here, an item is created. So it is tied to my invoices SharePoint list, but still it will not trigger immediately. I have a trigger conditions in the flow, which actually checks for a specific field. I'm using a field called start process. It needs to set a value for start. It's looking for a value called start. Then only my flow will be triggered. So when I submit the form, it actually through the form I'm actually I'm patching that value so that the flow will be triggered. So whenever I want to trigger that flow, I will use this method to trigger that flow. So once that is triggered, then this flow, all these other execution, all the actions in this flow gets executed. Let's see this got so many, I mean, one switch action where I'm checking the process status. As soon as the invoice is submitted, the submit, because that initial status is submitted, I'm here actually getting all the division approvers from the approvers list. And then you can see I'm filtering with the division and filtering with the role. Also, this is hard coded, we can make it generalized. So the role is the first one is a division approval, and I'm also ordering by the approval order also, so that when I order it in ascending order, I'll get the first one on the top. And I'm checking here if the approval order from this all these returned values is equivalent to 0 or not. And if it is, I'm actually filtering, I'm filtering all the values written from there. So when I filter the approvers with 0, that means this action, if it has 0, then I will have some number of items like approvers with the approval order as 0. So basically I'm in the loop, I'm checking what is the approval order length of the all the approvers returned by the action, comparing with the filtered ones. So when I get both of them are same, that means they are all parallel. Otherwise, there are sequential. So, and also the approval order is 0, the first one. Then I'm actually creating a task with all the details. So in the approval, as I said, I'm using a child flow to create a task. So I'm passing all these metadata to the task child flow so that I can create a task in the task SharePoint list. And also I'm putting some metadata for the system to understand, oh, this process is a parallel one. So that I can understand, instead of recalculating everything, rebuilding the logic again and again, I'm using some custom column to track it. If it is not parallel, then what will happen is it will only, if the first approval, whenever I submit an item, I'll only get the first approval one. And I will just be setting it to the first approval. And when it loops every time, it will not come, it will ignore all the second and third ones. That's how I'm manipulating the process. Once actually, if you see here, once this all these tasks are created, after that I'm updating the invoices SharePoint list with all the metadata and all of that, and submitting the previous status value, process status value. I'm changing it from submitted to pending division approval, and changing the previous status is to submitted. And also I'm setting my main important flag to stop, so that the flow will stop. Otherwise, because I'm also updating here, it will not re-trigger the process. So I'm stopping it. So that's how I actually manage. Once it moves from submitted to division approval, then the tasks are also created, the process is stopped, it updated all the metadata is required. That's how I see all the metadata or all the tasks here. So if I go here, if I open any other division pending one, if I go here, I can see the task will show up here because one of the tasks is created for me. So here, this is again a gallery where I connected the gallery to the task, the SharePoint list, and I'm also filtering based on the invoice ID to show only the task related to this particular invoice, not every single invoice. I mean, not every single task. And I'm also here, there is a button here, that button also has some logic when it should show approve or reject only for the user who is assigned to. If I'm the current user is Riza, I mean, this particular user, then only show approve or reject, otherwise show view details. That way, like I will not be approving it. So that's how I'm manipulating all of this. Any questions so far before we get into the approval part?
Nope, it's all clear, all self-explanatory, and you explained it very well. That's
Thank you.
great.
Thank you. So now we will click on approve or reject here. So even though I have logic in my process here, approval process, I mean the workflow, some logic is inbuilt, I mean built into the Power App also. I don't want to rely on flow because flow requires a lot of actions to do simple steps also, right? We need to get items and process it, filters and all of that. So I moved whatever logic I can do it within the Power App. I'm doing that in the Power App only. So now if I'm an approver here, if I come here and when I enter the comments and click on the approval button, there is some logic I have written here, which is little complex here, complex and longer logic here. So the steps are here. We need to see this way. When I click on approve as a division approver, these are the things we need to see. First, whatever task I am in, I'll not see this approve button unless I'm the actual approver. So I'm okay. I don't need to do that validation. So what the first step is, complete this task first. So the current task should be completed, should be marked as completed. And then second is, okay, I'm in the division approver. So are there any other division approvers next to me? If this process is a sequential, then I need to find out who is my next approver in at that particular stage. So I need to bring that information and create another task for that particular user. But if I'm all approvers in that particular stage are done, then I need to create a task for a user in the next phase, right? In the next stage. If it is a parallel one, then okay, I don't need to check for other approvers in my phase, but just move the process to the next stage. So like that, there are different, probably I should add more documentation to simplify this. But here, if you see here, I'm just refreshing all the invoices and I'm updating, I'm actually storing some variables to use in the patch and other places. So if you can see here, like in the invoice, I'm making the process to stop first, no more, I'm writing the history details, and then I'm actually patching the invoice task and marking it as the task is completed and approve it, and all of that task details I'm updating it and marking it as complete. So after that, what I'm doing is, depending on the stage where I am, and in each of the stage, whether it is a sequential or parallel, I have sub switches as well. In the parallel, if it is a parallel, I'm actually trying to check if there are any other approvers in the queue after me. So I need to get I'm sorry, one thing here is, in the parallel, what happens is, when a task is in the parallel, what happens is, three for example, there are three approvers in that particular division, so all the three will have three different tasks. So as a approver, if I approve my task, the other two people who are waiting still to approve it, those tasks should be cancelled, otherwise they will also go and approve it. So that's what I'm doing. In the parallel, I'm actually finding out, are there any tasks which are waiting at division approver level and in progress. I'm actually marking those tasks as cancelled, and also I'm updating the comments field for those tasks, saying okay, this task is cancelled by the system as a division approver, and because somebody else, some other approver already approved the other task, so you don't have to work on that. So because otherwise the parallel approval should be notified, so otherwise they will think that, oh, I need to work on that as well. So after that, and then I'm moving that task to the next level, and then start process. I'm again starting the process so that we can send some notification emails. So in the division approval, again, if it is a sequential one, then what happens is I'm actually finding out who is my next approver, and then finding out if the approver is really available. Means if I'm the third approver, there are no more approvers in my stage, then the process should move to the next stage. So I'm actually finding out if it is there are any other approvers next to me. So if that approver is no more approvers, then I'm not creating any additional tasks. But if there are approvers, then I need to create the task for them. So that's what exactly I'm doing here. So yeah, you can see the task is getting created with the patch command into the approval task. With the next approver, you can see the attached assigned to is the approver details. So yeah, you can see the next approver details here. So all the details, setting the priority and all of that. So like that, I'm approving it, and every stage we need to, this all recalculations happens, and based on the stage, based on the division, I'm moving these tasks to different stages. And coming to any questions, I know like it's explaining all of this logic in a video will be very complex, but I hope you all got the process. That's the main important thing.
Yes, absolutely, Krishna. The process is, the way that you've shown, that is pretty like anyone can easily understand it. And it is something that depending on their requirement, they need to tweak it. It's just an idea that how best we can design this
Right.
approval system. And this code, gives a lots of idea surrounding that. So yeah, all good.
Yeah, thank you. And one thing is about the rejection process here. If I again the rejection process at any stage, if I reject it, it should always go back to my initiator. So again, I'm updating the task. You can see here the task is marked as rejected, and the status is completed and rejected, and with all the comments and all of that. And the rejection is pretty simple. So whoever is rejecting, one thing is again in the rejection also, if there are multiple parallel tasks, all of them must be cancelled. And also if it is sequential, then we just need to assign it to the so here if it is if there are any in progress item tasks only happens in the parallel process, I'm canceling them. And and corporate, I'm just doing all of the same thing here, but different logic. I mean, same logic for different stages. And then finally, I'm assigning it to like I'm assigning everything to the pending initiator review. The status is getting changed. So let me quickly go to that, and actually I want to see if there are any items. And let's see here, pending account review. I want to see if there are tasks here. You can see also this color coding will help us to see which tasks are approved, which tasks are actually the orange color. That means they are cancelled, and the one in progress are in gray, and if something is rejected, which are in red. So easily identify that. So let me just I wanted to see if I can let me reassign it quickly to update, and then I will approve, and I will one more time I will reassign. I wanted to show the cancelled items, how we can how the system will cancel it. So I'm just trying to approve it. One last thing, and then we will see the cancelled items as well shortly. So when the process actually moves from one stage to another stage, there is a little bit time the flow will take, right? There is an SLA for the flow to trigger. So what happens is, if you see here, it moved on to the next stage, but I don't see the tasks yet. That means my flow had to be triggered, or the flow will take some time to process all of this, and task needs to be created. So in the meantime, I'm actually showing a message to the user also saying some backend process is in progress, and they can just wait in the same screen and maybe keep on clicking on it, or they can come back to the system, see at any point of time. So that way, like So once the tasks are created, then we will see the tasks on the top, because after the accounting, I think, I mean, in the process, the accounting, it will, you can see the task is actually completed. So let me go back one more time to see the division approvers is there. I hope again the division approvers. So again, let me just, there are no way to cancel it because I need to create more tasks. But as I said earlier, you can, to see the canceled task, if we can go to any of them, as I said, like all these are canceled. So as I said earlier, if I can, if I, when I approved, if you see here, the division approver, I approved this task, but the other two were also waiting, or those were all cancelled. So yeah, so this is pretty much it, but we can definitely spend 2 3 hours to definitely to deep dive into understand each line of code. But the overall high level view is, because of the flexibility in the power apps, canvas applications, you can manipulate the way you want. We can design based on the user requirements. But if I do not recommend to go in this approach, if you think the based on your user requirements, if you can use approval actions and you don't need, the approvers will not wait 28 days to approve it. If the process is pretty simple, I recommend using those approval actions. Only in specific special conditions, when you cannot handle through those actions, come in this way. But
Absolutely.
yeah, but still I wanted to show the users that you can do anything using power apps and power automate with respect to this approval process.
Absolutely, yes, well said. Because sometimes what happen here is some projects are having a very simple requirement. So at that time, you don't need to go through this large route. It is
Absolutely.
something like when you need dynamic approval, when you have dynamic hierarchy, when you have when you don't know whether it is sequential, parallel, and that is something you want to make as a part of your configurable thing inside your application. At that time, definitely you can go with this approach, and this is like. You can consider that as a main base foundation for yourself. This is something that we as a developer are doing, and if you want to mimic similar like this, depending on your need, you need to tweak it and you can just use it. So this is generally we are doing, like creating some kind of approval metrics, defining the sequences, and as Krishna said, like depending on the things, we can configure many other things as well. We can extend this application as well. So yeah, you guys can try it by your own, and yeah, feel free to ask your question in the comment section if you have any, or if you need some clarity on anything. We are happy to answer you all right. Krishna, do you want to share any other thing with our audience before we wrap this up, or are we all good?
We are good, but one last thing, I've been following Dhruvin's videos and all. I really like how he stays on top of the latest changes and topics and all. I really appreciate an effort from Dhruvin. It's not easy to create videos. A lot of hard work has to be done to create one single video. Like I see at least 3 to 5 days of worth of effort. You need to understand the concept, create it, edit it, and a lot of things. So please subscribe his channel and learn. Like we are in a community, so learn from each other.
Thank you so much, Krishna. It really means a lot to me. And yeah, I also provided all the social media handle detail of Krishna. Please feel free to connect him at any time. He's also very active in community, and this is the system today he presented. That is really something which I have seen for the very first time throughout the any community platform. Because most of the time we are talking about approvals and all, but the way that it established, that really set a very good milestone for any newbie who want to create this kind of application. So thanks a lot, Krishna, for sharing this amazing thing with all of us. And I would definitely love to have one more session with you on some other cool things that you are doing with.
Sure.
And for audience as well, if you guys think that we should cover some more things related this approval, and if you want to have any question or if you need any clarity, add in the comment section. And if you think that we should elaborate some of the part in upcoming sessions, feel free to provide your thoughts as well in the comment section. Yep. All right. So yeah, that's how this overall parallel sequential approval is working in Power Apps and Power Automate. And I would once again thank you so much, Krishna, for this amazing session. And uh, maybe for our audience, stay tuned with us and subscribe my channel and follow Krishna as well on all his social media handles. The links are available in the description box. With this, this is Dhruvin signing off. See you in the next session with some amazing content. Till then, have a great day. Goodbye.